Okay, excellent.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Delegate Al Carr, and welcome to the webinar on property tax assessments and appeals. Thank you very much to our friends at the State Department of Assessments and Taxation who are here today. They are the agency that is tasked with the assessment process, and they have several of their staff here, their experts, who will give us sort of an overview of Property Tax Assessments 101 and the appeals process and how that works. A number of people have submitted questions in advance, so I've asked SDAT folks to do their best to answer the questions that have been submitted. And if you have additional questions that you didn't submit in advance, feel free to submit them in the chat. And please keep yourself on mute if you're not one of the presenters or if you're not registered or recognized to speak. I also want to thank my staff who is supporting me. My Chief of Staff, David Kondowitz, is here, and we also have Trevor Fanning, who is running the Zoom. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our friends at the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. If you can sort of go ahead in whatever order you'd like to go in to give us the overview and answer the pre-submitted questions to the best you can, and then we'll go from there to things that are submitted in the chat. Thanks again.
Okay, I'm Ava Garvey. I'm the Supervisor of Assessments for Montgomery County. As I said before, I'm a little nervous, so please forgive me if my voice trembles a little bit. I'm also here with Brian Levinson, who is our appeal specialist. He will be doing the presentation, and he'll be answering some questions. I'll answer some questions too. And Adam Lewis, our area supervisor, may also be here. I'm not sure if he jumped back on, but he's here to observe and help us out if we need any help. So we have an hour, and hopefully we'll get through everything that we need to get through. Like I said, I want to try to keep our answers broad, and the questions that are really specific, we'd like to try to answer them outside of the meeting. At the end of the presentation, our contact information will be on the slides, our email address and telephone number. Email is probably the best way to submit questions to us. Okay, so Brian, we'll hand over.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Welcome. Just real quick, I'm Brian Levinson. I'm the appeals specialist. A couple weeks, I'll have 15 years experience, and for the last 10 years, I've been doing most of the second and third level appeals. Just so to give you a little bit of perspective. And as Ava said, we're going to try to get to as many of the general questions as we can. And then I have a PowerPoint, which I hope will answer some of those questions. The more point specific questions, as we said, might be better handled through an email or, separate from this meeting. So let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen here. And let's see. All right. So real property assessments and appeals. All right. So assessments statewide, we have a headquarters division in Baltimore, but there's a local office in each of the county seats. So for Montgomery County, that's Rockville. 2.3 million property accounts in Maryland, and a third of those are valued every year. This map just shows the county seats. You just need to know that Rockville is the county seat of Montgomery County. So all property in an assessment group are valued for the same date. We have 3 groups. So properties that were assessed as of 1/1/22, and then 21 and 20. You can figure out when your last assessment was by subtracting 3 years, when your next assessment is by adding 3 years. So we have that. Now, we can value properties in the interim of the 3-year cycle if there's a substantially completed new construction, which adds at least $100,000 in value to the property, if the zoning classification is changed, if there's a change in use or character, if there's erroneous calculation or measurement, if it's rezoned, or if there's a subdivision that occurs. And any of the times that we notify you with those changes, or there's the petition of appeal, you have appeal rights for those. So we use one or more of the 3 universally accepted approaches to valuing property: cost, income, or market. We, the assessor, have the latitude in determining the most appropriate valuation method. We're not going to use income for commercial properties. Excuse me, for residential properties. We're not going to use income for residential properties. It just doesn't work, even if they're a rental property. So we'll use cost and market. In commercial, you might use income more than you would the others. So we have the latitude to determine that. There are several property types under residential. We've got single family, townhouse, condominium. And you can see for commercial, we've got office, retail, warehouse, apartments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Different types might have, especially in the commercial, might have different methods, different approaches that we use. When it comes to residential property, which is what we're going to spend time talking about today, because I'm not versed enough to do commercial, and you're probably more concerned with the assessment of your home than a business that you might have. So we're going to look at the construction costs. We're going to look at the land value. We're going to apply a neighborhood adjustment, and then we're going to also use statistical validation with sale properties. So we're going to look at costs, and then we're going to use the market approach as a check on that. So we will use a hybrid of cost and market. And so we look at number of stories, size, type of construction, quality of the materials, the type of heat, number of bathrooms, fireplaces, types of garages, does it have a porch? Those kinds of things would be some of the physical attributes. And then because we have so many properties, we have to use mass appraisal techniques. So one of the things we do is we model, we put similar homes together. And that's by number of stories, by quality of construction, by style of construction. You're not going to have a rancher and a colonial model together because they're just different houses. And then we can use a neighborhood adjustment to adjust for market influences for each of those particular models within a neighborhood. And then our statistical measure is based on IAAO standards, International Association of Assessing Officers. All of the data is contained in what's called a worksheet. And this slide here shows you basically this is an actual worksheet. It's not a Montgomery County worksheet, but all of the worksheets are the same in every county. The only difference would be the rates and the values and things like that. You can get yours from our office free of charge. And the previous slide here said at any time. So you can get it at any time if you're curious as to how we have your property classified. And it might be a good idea to do that to see if there are any discrepancies. You know, we say you've got 1,500 square feet of finished basement. You only have 800. Well, that might be something that you wouldn't necessarily know unless you pulled the unless you got the worksheet. So every 3 years, or in the cases that I talked about before, if there's a change in zoning or the $100,000 in improvement, you'll get what's called a notice of assessment. And I'm sure most, if not all of you, have already received your notice of assessment. It gives the old value and the new value, the land value, the building value. And if there's a homestead tax credit, it also gives the deadline to file an appeal and the options for appeal. And then it also has a place for a worksheet request and a sales listing. I'll get into some of that as we get through these slides here. So now, when there's an increase in assessment, it's phased in over the course of the 3-year assessment cycle. So if in 2019, a property was valued at $200,000, and for 2022, it's valued at $230,000, then that $30,000 increase is broken up in 10, 10, and $10,000 increments in this particular case. And you see that the phase-in is 210, 220, and 230. So that you're not burdened with paying higher taxes on the highest value for all 3 years of the cycle. And that's unless there's a homestead tax credit, whatever number's lower is what you pay on. Now, decreases, if we lower a value, those decreases don't get phased in. So if it were the other way around, it were 230 in 2019 and 200 in 2022, it would be 200 for 3 years. We're not going to stair step those decreases in like we do the increases. So when you opened your letter from us, you got a letter from our director, Michael Higgs, explaining the assessment, a little bit of an overview of the assessments, and then then it talked about the homestead tax credits. And now, one of the most important pieces of paper, this is what a notice of assessment looks like. So as we talked about, the taxable assessment is boxes 1, 2, and 3. Box 4 is the prior value. 5, 6, and 7 is the breakdown of the land and building in the total. And then 8, 9, and 10 are the phase-ins. If there's an increase, in this case, box number 8 does not match box number 1. It does. 2 and 8 match because this particular county has a different homestead percentage. So this is not a Montgomery County notice, but that's how you would tell if you have homestead. So then on the back side of that, it shows you pertinent data. Now let me go back one quick second. Near the bottom, it says an appeal must be filed or postmarked by 2/11/2022. That's a very important date. So if we get it on the 12th, 13th, 14th, but it's postmarked by the 11th, it's still considered to be timely. And then this is one of the ways that you would do it. You can go online, and I hate to keep going back, but there's a control number right near the top of the of this in this box here. You would need that control number to file your appeal online. If you are going to mail it in, you just need to send us the back of this form, your signature, your name. There are 3 options for appeal. You can do it in writing. We'll talk about each of these options as we go through: writing, telephone, video. If you're doing a video hearing, we need to have your email address because that's where we're going to send you the link. So you can put your email address right here. If there are any comparable properties which you want to buy the worksheets for, which you can for $1 a piece, you need to give us those addresses and include a check with that. And then you can mark these boxes. We're going to send these to you. We're going to send you your worksheet anyway. We're going to send you the sales, but you can mark those boxes. And then, so this next slide talks a little bit.
Sorry, Brian, you
Yeah.
mentioned just sending the back of the form, which
The
is
whole
true,
thing.
but we need the front too because we need
Yeah.
to see the account number and
Right, the whole
property is being appealed.
thing, but
Yeah.
because we'd have to look it up by the name, but as long as we have a way to identify the property being appealed, make a copy of it for yourself, keep it in your file, and then send us a copy of it. So let's talk real quick about homesteads. Excuse me. So homestead tax credit, it limits the increase in taxes per year for the principal resident. So we could raise your value 350%, but you're only going to pay taxes on 10% more than you paid on last year. So that's what the homestead tax credit says. The state is 10%, and then the counties can set their own percentage for theirs. They do not transfer. And then with the sale of a property, the taxable assessment becomes the basis for the new buyer's property tax calculation. Here's a list of the 2021 county homestead tax caps. You see Montgomery County is 10%. Somerset and Calvert are also 10%. I'd hate to be in St. Mary's where it's a 0%. But just, you need to concern yourselves with the 10% in Montgomery County. So that's what we have. And then, so you can appeal your property whenever we send you a notice, which would be those times, regular reassessment, the change in value of over $100,000, those other things that we mentioned. You can also appeal in the interim of the 3-year cycle, and that's called a petition for review. That form is found on our website under forms, or you can get one from our office. It's called petition for review / new owner appeal. We'll talk about these more in depth. There's slides for these, but generally the reassessment appeal is a 45-day window. The petition has to be in by the first working day after January 1st. And then the appeal upon purchase 60 days from the date of transfer, assuming it was purchased within the first 6 months of the year. We'll get into that a little here. So you're appealing the value that's shown on your assessment notice. So as I said, you go online with that control number, or you reply to the notice of assessment by signing and returning the appeal form. And as we said, 45 days. And this is, again, the back of the form with what is needed. We'll talk about the 3 options. They're the same for all types of appeal. So instead of going back and forth, we'll talk about those. If you go online to our website, this is what it looks like. You'll be able to select the county, put in the notice number. That control number that I mentioned was in the top of that, was in the bottom of that box at the top. And this will get you your appeal. As I said, for the petition for review, the first working day following January 1. I like to tell people, for ease and convenience, by December 31st, but you do actually have a couple more days after that. First working day after January 1st. Could be the 3rd, could be the 4th, could be the 2nd, just depends on when it falls on the calendar. And this is for properties that are not being reassessed. So if you're getting a note, if you file a petition and then the next January you get a notice, your notice of assessment trumps your right to file your petition, and that's filed with us. And basically, what events have occurred that may cause the property value to decline? Could be the market's down, could be conditional issues, could be several things, could be a number of different things. This is what the form looks like. It's called petition for review or new owner appeal of real property. This one I know has 4 options. We've suspended the personal hearing option for due to COVID. So anybody that checks that box, you're going to get a phone hearing. This form has the 4, but it's only really 3 options at this point in time. Appeal upon purchase can be filed if the property is transferred after January 1, but before July 1, it must be filed within 60 days. When the sale price indicates the property value has declined. Now, I want to clarify this point right here. If you purchase your property, if the property is purchased from a bank or is a short sale or foreclosure, even though that sale price is going to be below the assessment, chances are it wasn't a market sale, so it wouldn't be necessarily, wouldn't be something we might consider because it's not representative of the markets. And we'll talk more about that. So there's 3 steps. There's 3-level appeals process. First is supervisor's hearing. That's going to be with an assessor. When you receive your notification of that, you can appeal that within 30 days to the Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board. We're going to talk about each of these, so I'm just going to give you the general on this slide. And then you have 30 days from that notice, that notice to go to the Maryland Tax Court if you wish to do so. So let's talk about the supervisor's level hearing. So you can provide any documentation that you think supports your contention that your property is overvalued. If you're going to do it in writing, I would suggest sending everything you want us to consider, all the recent sales that are similar to yours, any recent appraisals, any information about your specific property, chronically wet basement, foundation crack, hasn't been renovated in 30 years, those kind of things. You want to submit that with your appeal form. It's just easier and cleaner that way. If you're going to do it via telephone or via video, you can just send the appeal form in. We'll schedule you for a date and time to either call in or to log on to the video. And at that time, you'll actually meet with an assessor, and you can email them anything you wish for them to consider. So we will mail you both your worksheet and an area sales listing. Now, this is all of the sales, all of the arm's length sales that have occurred in your neighborhood in the last year or so, not necessarily the specific houses that were used to value yours. It's going to have everything. It's going to have townhouse. It's not going to have condo, but it's going to have townhouse. It's going to have 1-story. It's going to have colonials. It's going to have Cape Cod. It's going to have all of those sales. The idea is it jumpstarts your research. You can cull out the ones that you feel are more comparable to yours per se, and and then come back to us and say, hey, but we feel these are comparable and they support a lower value. You can also obtain sales data from Redfin or Zillow or the SDAT website under Real Property Data Search. Just be careful when using Zillow, Redfin. Zillow sometimes has a Zestimate, which is an average. So you want to look at the sale prices, the aggregate sale prices. And sometimes the square footages will be different from ours because they calculate them differently. They might throw the whole basement in as part of the square footage. So just be careful with that. I would suggest purchasing the worksheets of any comparable property that you wish to use. So it's informal. You want to provide us with the information that affects the value, and it also provides an opportunity to verify the details. So like I said earlier, if we have inaccurate number of bathrooms or the wrong amount of finished basement, this is a perfect time to tell us about it so we can take care of that. Focus on the points that affect your value, indicate why the total market value does not reflect the market value of your property. And again, identify any inaccurate information. And you may provide sales to support this, but avoid these certain things: comparison of assessments to other properties, comparisons of past values, percent of increase, amount of the tax bill, services rendered, not rendered. I have a property owner going to the appeal board next month who sent in a list of tax payments, and that hers is considerably higher than everyone else's on her street. That's not something that's up for, that's not relevant to what the market value of the property is. So once you give us everything that you think is warranted, that you want us to consider, we'll give it the weight it's due. If you give us an appraisal, what was the purpose of it? Was it for refi? Was it for purchase? How old are those sales? They've used some listings. Did they use short sales? We're going to give everything the weight it's due, and then we're going to determine whether or not a reduction is warranted. We're going to send you a final notice of assessment. Either way, it's going to look very similar to that notice that I showed you before. but it's going to say final notice of assessment, and it'll have a 30-day deadline to file an appeal to the next level, which, so as I said, is appealed to the next level. PTAB, 3-member panel, Montgomery County homeowners, independent from our office, appointed by the governor. You come in, make a presentation, we make a presentation, they make a decision. That decision can then be appealed to the Maryland Tax Court. Maryland Tax Court, again, it's another independent agency. Judges are appointed by the governor. This is the most formal of the 3 levels. There's objections, there's evidence, there's questioning. You don't have to be an attorney to be there, but it is a courtroom type of atmosphere. It is a Your Honor type of judge, and so it's the highest level of valuation. If there's a legal matter, if there's a legal issue, then it can go to circuit court. People will appeal to circuit court when they're not satisfied with their tax court outcome. Circuit court's really not going to not going to hear the case unless there's some legal issue involved with it. This is our contact information. You can email the general email at sdat.mont@maryland.gov, or you can email me directly if you wish to. It's Brian, BRYAN.Levinson, LEVENSON @maryland.gov. I'll put it in the chat after I stop sharing my screen. And then, so if you go to our website, you get the office listings, the brochures, applications, procedures, do the property search, look at the tax rates. And then, so thank you for letting me go through this PowerPoint. Our state supervisors, Dan Phillips, our directors, Michael Higgs, they're the ones that have kind of put this whole thing together. I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now, and then I'll go through some of these additional questions. So let me see, stop the share. Okay, so, and let me go put this in the chat, but while I'm talking, so the most effective appeal, if you intend to be successful in an appeal, would be the best way to do that would be to provide us with sales information, real market sales data. So we want arm's length sales, no short sales, no foreclosures, no bank sales, RIOs, estate sales, auctions, none of that. They have to be regular sales. You want to try to find as close in characteristic, so similar in size, similar in age, similar in neighborhood, similar in quality of construction. That's where the worksheets come in real handy. Those are the best kinds of that along with the any specific data about your home would be how to be very successful. There really aren't any, there's really no format to follow because each appeal may have different issues. But just keep in mind that the sales is what we're looking for. Last year, Montgomery County, our office reduced about 49% of the residential reassessment appeals that we received. So it's a 50-50 proposition. But what I can tell you is you have the right to file appeal. You file the appeal. It's probably going to be March or April before we schedule you anyway. So you've got some time to do your research. If you come across, if you're looking through your research and you see that maybe we're correct, you can always withdraw your appeal. There's nothing that says you have to keep it on the books. So to be most effective, you need to focus on the points that affect the value, indicate why the total market value does not reflect the property value with use of sales evidence, identify any mathematical errors, and definitely avoid those comparison issues of, well, I'm paying more taxes than anybody else, or my neighbor's assessment went down 32% and mine went up 1%, or whatever it might be. And a written appeal can be just as effective as a telephone hearing or a video hearing. Again, it all has to do with what you provide to us, and you know, the video or telephone hearing does give us an opportunity to speak. You can, you know, we can talk about how many bathrooms do you have, how much finished basement do you have, you know, those kinds of things that, you know, and you can ask questions. If you ask a question in your letter, we're not necessarily going to reach out to respond to it because it's a written appeal and we're going by what you've submitted. So those are the kinds of things that happen. So what happens after that? So after you have your appeal, or when it's, you know, in writing, we look at everything that you've submitted, everything that you tell us. We will look at everything. We'll look at the sales that you've given us. We'll look at any of the data issues that you've told us about. We're going to do our own market analysis as well, and we're going to determine a value. Now, that value could be the same, or it could be lowered based on whatever has been presented to us. And so you won't, it's not like a court hearing where you get your decision immediately. At the end of the hearing, we're not going to say, here's your value, because we have to do the research. We have to look at it. So we will, after you leave, we will take the opportunity to review everything, do our analysis, and send you that notification. When it comes to the specific questions about, as we said, about the specific areas, those might be better off being discussed in an email. But you know, we can definitely talk about certain things. So with that said, Ava, did you have anything you wanted to add before we open it up to the non-pre-submitted questions?
Let's see, some of these questions were somewhat general. Well, like the question about the state and the county's role in the assessment process.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we are the state. We assess, we value the properties. We send our values to the county, who is the taxing authority. The county council will set the tax rate. And that will then be applied to the tax bills based on the assessments, and then the county will be the one to levy and collect. And we figured it out with our rough math the other day. It's about 10% goes to the state and 90% goes to the county based on the tax rates. One is just over 1 and one is just under 1. So we like to say tax is roughly 1% of value. So, you know, if you think your property is overvalued and you get a reduction, you know, you got to think, okay, my tax is roughly 1% of that. Is it worth it to file the appeal? Anything else, Ava, that I might have missed?
I mean, we can, this is Adam Lewis.
Hi, Adam.
Can you hear me? There is a constant yield because we're not the taxing authority. As assessments increase, the local government will have to adhere to a constant yield. And what that means is the assessment should not trigger necessarily a tax increase. And every year there's an open forum where that they have to publicize in the local papers for that public forum, where if the county has to bring in the same amount of revenue they did the preceding year. So when the assessments do rise, there will be the cause and effect of an increased tax. If they keep the tax rate the same, they're going to technically pass a tax increase. So there was a question related to how that worked. And I figured, and our website does provide a lot of detail. You got to go to other information where you can find a lot of the links that'll provide that.
I was just scrolling. Well, thank you. While Adam was talking, I was scrolling through some of these questions that are already in the chat, and maybe I'll handle some of those. And I know we got somebody with a hand up, but let me go through some of these.
The only thing I want to add to that last thing is part of that question was, when does the county set the tax rate? And that's usually sometime in June before the tax bills go out in July 1.
Yeah, I believe it's June. So one of the questions is, how do we get a copy of the worksheet? Well, you can call us, email us. If you're filing an appeal, we're going to send you yours automatically. But if you're curious as to see it, you can call us, you can send us an email. We can send you one. There's a question from Chad. Does it make sense for an assessment to double over 3 years without any major construction on the property? Well, that depends on the market. If the market in your particular area is exploding, then it may go up even without any major construction. So it just depends on the neighborhood. What is the average percentage increase for the assessments, and what is the typical range of percentage increases? Adam, do you have an idea of?
Yeah, I looked that up while you were talking. Montgomery County's average increase in the assessment base was 11.3%. That was what was provided in the public release. We had a press release. 90.17% of properties in Montgomery County through this past reassessment for 2022, 90% of the properties increased in value. 90% of the improved properties. There was a question about homeowners tax credit.
Yes.
We're a real property division. What we can do is, if you are unsure of the phone number, our website will have that phone number, but I wouldn't want to get into the specifics of what can be allowed or allocated for the calculation permit premises for homeowners tax credit. What I can give you is I'll put in the chat box the phone number for homeowners tax credit division. How about I do that?
Yeah, they're their own division. That's all they do all day. So they're more versed in it than we would be. There's a question from Kathy. In a townhouse community, are you assessing everyone? Townhouses typically don't have new added construction. If it's your regular 3-year assessment, you are being reassessed. Whether you've done anything to your property or not, by state statute, you are being reassessed based on the market value of similar homes that have sold recently. So even if it's a townhouse community, you haven't put an addition on because there's really not space to do that, you're still going to be assessed because the market may have changed since the last time. Connor Crimmins writes, what process is used to appeal the category or attributes of your home used on the base calculation worksheet? Well, if it's reassessment, go ahead and file the reassessment appeal. And as part of your reasoning, tell us what is inaccurate. If it's not your reassessment year, you can still get that worksheet, see what's going on, and file that petition for review appeal, and we can take care of it at that particular time.
Brian, I saw a question from Marshall Presser.
Okay.
Historic districts.
Yes.
Does the process understand that there are limits on what can be built in a historic district, and thus the comparison to lots that are not in a historic district might not be accurate?
Yeah. Okay. So we will try to use comparisons in the historic district, but if there aren't any sales, the land values in those historic districts should reflect that they're historic districts. So that's, we realize that there are limitations to these things, but everybody has the same limitation. It's not like only one house, one property has a specific limitation. They all have a certain, just like the townhouses, they all have a limitation that they can't build on the back. Doesn't mean that they don't all have a value. So we do keep that in mind, but we'll apply our land values to compensate for that. Let's see, where else?
There was a question about the 10% cap. So one of the mentions, and he doesn't have the slide up anymore, but on your reassessment notice, it'll have whether or not you're approved to receive a homestead credit. Different than a homeowner's tax credit. Homeowner's tax credits are based on income, and an owner may apply, based on their need, and you have until October 1st to apply for that. The homestead tax credit is based on it being your principal residence. And once you've done that one-time application, and if you're unsure if you're completed that, then look at your reassessment notice and it'll say your approval in the upper right-hand corner, yes or no, or pending. If it's pending, it means it's under review. However, that means you're limited to 10% per year on the assessment increase. So if you're in his example he provided earlier, you went from 200 to 230,000. So if your prior assessment and taxable assessment was even 200,000, 10% of that would be I'm not capped until my value would increase the next year over 220,000, because 10% of the 200 is $20,000. So in the case of the example that Brian shared, the phased in assessment's 210,000 for the first year. That means I'm not going to receive it. It doesn't mean I'm not eligible. It's just that the value increase did not hit threshold to be over the 10%. So in relations to a lot of the properties, sometimes in Montgomery County, due to their value, if you're a $400,000 home, 10% is $40,000 per year. And that's with the phased in assessment. It's not looking at the value, the new total value, and it's looking at the new phased in value. So that's where it's capped. And local government sets that cap, as he shared that slide with you. It was actually Talbot County that was 0, not St. Mary's. But what he says, he didn't want to live there, but what that meant is that as long as you reside in your house, you will not be hit with it. Our assessment could rise as much as it wants, but that owner would not have any more tax liability to the county as long as they resided there. Montgomery County's is at 10%. So the local governments have until March. Used to be November, but there was a law change to allow municipalities and local governments to set that at up. I think their filing deadline is sometime in March. And
that was my bill to change the date from November to March.
Was that your bill? So you were very
my bill.
Yeah, so that does give them more flexibility and input. However, our notice is cut off in November. So some jurisdictions do change theirs afterwards. And if it were to change in Montgomery County, it would maybe allow for greater potential in receiving it.
And so the message there is this is a decision made by the Montgomery County Council. So if people think that 10% is not the appropriate cap on assessment increases, you can contact your county council members and say, it should be a different number. It should be 7% or it should be 5%. And they have until March to be able to make that change.
Correct. Now, yes, I misspoke. I said I didn't like Talbot County having a 0% cap instead of St. Mary's. Lewis Willen pointed that out in the chat as well. We have a question from John Coe. Why in the same block where no homes have been improved, the increases in assessments vary so much among properties? Different types of properties, different styles, have different shares of the market. A colonial is probably not going to sell for the same amount as a rancher. So you can have differences in assessments on the same block if they're different styles of home. Connor.
There was a question about what's the difference between a new owner appeal, where was it, and appeal upon purchase. Well, they're both relative,
thing.
the same in a new owner appeal. However, one thing we neglected to mention is if you purchased your home between, the idea is you have 60 days if you purchased it between January and June 30th. The idea is local governments have to get their tax bills correct and so forth. If you have yet to receive that tax bill as a new owner. However, if you purchased it in September or October, you may still file an appeal, but then it's considered a petition for review because it's for the next taxable year.
Yep.
And you would want to do so if you feel that you purchased it at a value that's not related or you don't feel is equitable to what the assessment is. And you would be granted such appeal. We can't prorate because when you purchase your home, and this is per the law, but I assume the law was written this way because when you go buy a home in October, a portion of those taxes are prorated, and the former owner would have paid up until the time they relinquished ownership, and then a new owner pays. So when you file, there would be no way to prorate money back to that former owner and to the new owner. And I guess counties have to set budgets and different other things.
Okay, so we have a question. Can we explain what causes the county multiplier and the neighborhood adjustment to increase? Well, the county multiplier has to do with the soft costs associated with buildings. So if the building industry is increasing their costs, that can go up. The neighborhood adjustment is the market adjustment. So they both can go up. One can go up, the other one they can go down. So that's that. Does a homeowner have to file an appeal in order to get their worksheet and comparable sales? We did have a slide in here that said you can get your worksheet at any time. Adam, what would you say about the sales? Would they be able to get
They're
the sales?
welcome to the sales listing anytime too.
Okay.
And our website also provides some basics to what your house is on our real property search. But we also have a sales search there, and you can enter if you have your worksheet, you can also enter your neighborhood data to get sales from our website in a fashion similar to what the sales listing would show. But you're welcome to us. You just have to include your address so we know what sales listing to send you.
Yep. The online appeal form does not offer a way to include attachments. Is there an opportunity to email additional information? I believe at some point when there's an email that gets generated, and you should be able to, but we'll have to check into that.
Well, they can always send it to our general email box.
Exactly. You can always send it to that SDAT.mont. Susan Barron says, if we request a video appeal, do we submit our supporting documentation by February 11th to accompany the video appeal? You don't have to. You can just send the form in, and then when you have your video appeal, you can email the assessor with your information at that time, or you can submit it with your appeal form. Montgomery County issues a flat 692 tax credit to each homeowner who uses their home as principal residence. Does filing the homestead tax credit verification have any impact on whether or not a homeowner gets this? My belief, and I could be wrong, is no. It just has to be a principal residence. You don't have to be getting the homestead or have applied for it. It just has to be listed as a principal residence. But I could be wrong. Is it possible for assessments to go up after SDAT re-reviews the information? We will not increase your assessment on appeal. We will either keep it the same or lower it if the market bears a reduction. So don't be afraid to say, oh, well, the market's still going up. Are they going to increase it if I file the appeal?
That's what if we find we missed an addition. We wouldn't increase it on appeal, but we would pick it up.
Right.
Possibly pick it up.
Right. We could pick it up
out of cycle.
Right. But we wouldn't increase it on the appeal. Go ahead, Adam.
There was a question about the cost of the worksheet. There, if I'm not mistaken, my thing keeps moving around as quick as I can keep up with on the chats. I want to say it might have been from the delegate about, were you trying to get clarity on the cost of the worksheet?
Yeah, and I
Dollar
had to jump off to answer a phone call from my son's doctor real
Yeah.
quick, so I might have missed it, but I just want to make sure.
They're a
Yeah,
dollar a
there's
piece.
a personal worksheet to your property you own is free, but for comparable properties, they are $1. It's set as a nominal fee, and I guess it's a fee that's, covers the cost of the paper, employees pulling it up, but it also prevents an owner coming in with 100 worksheets wanting comparables to every one of them that may not make a lot of sense. But if you can also go to the website and probably get some basics. It'll tell you on our website if the basement's finished. It'll tell you the number of baths. You may not need to have the comparable worksheet. Some of the more intricate elements or structures to the house may not be there, but it'll define an overview, a pretty good overview. There was a question about the deadline to file a homestead application. The homestead applications due, if you've not filed it, you want to file it before, I want to say May 1st, and that's for the upcoming July year. So to get the application, it's easy. The easiest way to file is online, but you also need a control number for that. And if Ava, you may want to alert Kay, I would email our offices with the email that Brian provided, and there's something we do in the system to get a control number for you to provide it so that you can apply online for a homestead credit. If not, you can do it by paper too. It just takes the approval process is a little, it's done manually then.
Right. I know we're starting to get close to the 4 p.m. cutoff, but if you all can continue to answer questions the best we can, and then people
I can
put them in the chat.
Yep, I can stick around for a little while.
Brian?
There was a
Yeah.
request. There was a
think a
request
good
for the email and phone number.
Yeah,
of the
we'll put it. I'll put it back up.
Yeah.
I'll put it back up. I'm gonna share my screen again. I might not be able to see the chat, but I'll share my screen again. And what did I do? Did I just do the wrong thing? Probably.
No, I think that's it. That's the right.
You're
that's
showing
right.
You can see your
Perfect.
screen.
Yep. Okay. All right. So this is where you would go. Now, James had something about a specific scenario. And what I would say to you, James, is don't worry about the assessments. Don't worry about your neighbor's assessment or your assessment. Worry about the sales. And if your neighbor's not the same house as yours, maybe they're smaller, maybe they're larger, maybe they're a colonial and you're or they're a rancher and you're colonial. It may not be a good sale, but you can always good sale in comparison wise, but you can always bring it to us and let us decide. I'll put this back up again, but let me stop the share so I can go through some more of these things in the chat. Let's see, where was I?
Someone asked about whether, if you do a video appeal, how do you submit any attachments?
Yeah, so if you do a video appeal, you're going to meet with an assessor. It's going to be just like this. We're going to have a conversation. And I would tell the person, hey, email me everything you want me to consider. Here's my email address. And then if they email it to me during the appeal, we can talk about it during the appeal. If they email it to me after, we can, I can go through it all. I thought there was a way to add the stuff to it if you're filing online. Karen says, do you look at average markets over 3 years or just the last year? We'll look at the entire universe of sales data since the last time things were assessed, but we're going to focus on the closest sales to the January 1st. So the closest sales that are more indicative of the market as of that time. Can you show the, okay.
Somebody asked, what's the difference in the worksheet to looking it up on the website?
Worksheet's more
Work-
specific.
Yeah, the worksheet's going to give you the model, the details of the property. It's going to show you the neighborhood. It's going to show you if it had a porch. It's going to show you the type of heat.
Yep.
It's going to give you more information than online, but
Yeah.
I think in a basic appeal, if you are an owner who just wants to refer to sales and look and try to find some specifics to property, it'll tell you the number of stories, and you'll know if it's in the vicinity of your neighborhood and so forth.
Yep.
Many owners do just use sometimes the website's information. However, there could be sometimes there's a property with a significant structure like a pool or some other features that aren't shown on the website that may cause for a value to be different.
So Phyllis says, didn't there used to be a 10% cap on the amount of tax increase? Yes, that is still true. So as I said earlier, if we increase your value 30%, you're only going to pay on 10% more than you paid on last year. Let's see.
Somebody wrote, if I request a worksheet and there is a discrepancy that implies my property is undervalued, then do I need to legally
File an
appeal
appeal.
or stick with the assessment? If you feel there's a discrepancy with your assessment, for example, and this has happened in a few occasions over my career, is my basement's finished and you're showing it as being unfinished. If you want the record to be correct, you can contact our office. You don't need to file an appeal. We'll note the account and correct it for the next reassessment, or we can add it to the property record and then we'll override the value to maintain it so that it appears correctly online. This comes up on occasion when somebody is getting ready to sell a home or do something with their home and they want the record to be reflected correctly, or maybe the size was bigger than what one thing to note that wasn't mentioned earlier but is important is we do measure exterior walls to the house dimension. Sometimes you can get a brick house, or even take, for example, my house, it has thicker walls. It may be that if you measure the interior walls, you come up a little shorter. Measure the exterior wall, we kind of round to the nearest. We can't go into inches. So if it's 31 foot, 2 inches, we'd probably call it 31 foot. If it was 30 foot, 9 inches, we might have went to 31 foot. Does that say, well, we have to draw a line somewhere and in the sand, and it's just done historically by exterior.
Okay.
But if you did
Thank
find
you. Thank you, folks from SDAT. We are getting dangerously close to 4 p.m. and I have to jump off and go on a different Zoom to present two of my bills. So we're going to stop the recording in about 30 seconds or so. But I want to thank you all again for this extremely valuable information. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who participated. If you didn't get your question answered, we still want to get you an answer. So feel free to contact SDAT directly, or if you want to contact my office, you can send it to us and we will compile all those questions and get you answers and send them out to everybody. We're going to make the video available to anybody who wasn't able to be here or who wants to do a replay of it. So again, thank you all very, very much. I'm going to drop off soon and we're going to stop the recording, but if it's up to Trevor, if he wants to stay on, and the SDAT folks, if they want to stay around for just, informal conversation to continue.
Yeah, I can stick around for another little while. It seems like there's a few more questions in the chat. So if people wanted to stick around, I can try to handle those.
Okay, well, I'll leave it to Trevor's discretion if he wants to stop the recording now or leave it on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'll stay on,
but
I'll stay on and help out. Seems like people have some questions, and so I'm happy to help out.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna
Thanks,
drop
Delegate
off.
Carr. Take care.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Delegate
Yes,
Carr.
thank you, Delegate Carr. Good
Yep.
luck with your bills.
Thanks, everybody.
So, thank you. So Vicky says, what if there are no true comps? My house has not changed since 1955. It's one of the smallest homes in the neighborhood, no extra bedrooms, bathrooms. I would say try to find something as close as possible in size, in age, in your neighborhood. And do one of the video or phone hearings, and we can talk about it. We can have a discussion about it.
Brian, if there's nothing
Yeah.
within her own neighborhood, she could go to a neighboring
Exactly.
neighborhood that.
Yep, a comparable,
closely
a
resembles.
similar neighborhood. John Coe says one home went up 22% and another went up 3% in the same block with no improvements to either, and both were colonials. Could be that they're different sizes, different qualities of construction, therefore they have different model numbers and therefore have different shares of the marketplace. So
it could be that one also had a prior
appeal
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that would've-
so they got a reduction before, and so theirs went up 22%, and then to market correct, and the one that didn't have the appeal, the other one only went up 3% because that's where the market is. So let's see. If the houses around me are being torn down, oh, well, let's go back here. Neighbors construction that reduces your view, privacy, drainage, property casualty. If there is a property casualty, please let us know about that. We can adjust that on the appeal. Your neighbor's construction that reduces your view, your light, your privacy, your drainage. Is it a detriment to the market? Is there a way to quantify it in the marketplace? Is it specifically that properties are selling for X% less simply because of this new construction house? Or are there other factors? So you'd want to, you can always bring it to us and we'll consider it and give it the weight it's due. Kira says, if houses around me are being torn down and new construction replacement has prices 300% higher, how can my ability to be able to remain in the home without considering sales value when I don't want to sell to be protected? Well, if the market value goes up 300%, your taxes are only going up 10% if you have the homestead tax credit. So, that's the kind of thing that that I would say for that. Let's see.
The important thing to remember is appealing your assessment is, you have to think about the value is, the value, it relates to your value, not so much in your taxes. We can't control the outside influences. And there's going to be many times where you don't have a sale that is representative of your own home. And it's just like the assessor's job is to try to locate and find the most comparable. And somebody asked a question earlier that was provided to before, and that is, what kind of decreases has Montgomery County, what's the success rate? Well, we don't, we hope that our assessments are valid as our number one concern, and the appeal process helps us validate it because we do a mass appraisal. Last year, and all I could do was look up last year, Montgomery County's office reduced about 49% of their hearings. Now, you could look at that and say, were they wrong that many times? Well, not necessarily, because there's only about 1,600 or 1,700 appeals last year. But also, there's 3 levels to the appeal process. And sometimes, it's a judgment of value, and you may get an owner that feels this way about it. And the assessment office also looks at the property and has to stay within our constraints, based on the sales activity we've seen. And that's why there is 3 levels to the appeals process, to give those owners that extra opportunity to appeal. I'm going to jump off here now, but I just wanted to kind of say that and just make sure everybody knows, if you don't, don't take it personally if you did appeal. I mean, and we did affirm something, but we really do reduce appeals. So the evidence was in the statistics from last year. So best of luck and thanks to Brian and Ava and Delegate Carr for inviting me to attend.
Thank you, Adam.
It looks like there's just a few more
Thanks, Adam.
questions, so I can try to get to them, but if Ava, if you need to get off too, I could. So,
No, I'll stick around.
okay, Phyllis says, read the 10% cap. Does that get phased in over the 3 years? No. So the 10% is year. So if you pay 10% more than you paid last year. If you paid 100, if your taxes were based on $100,000 this year or last year, they're going to be based on $110,000 next year. And then add $11,000 to that, and then add 10%, 10%. So you can obtain your own worksheet by emailing us and we can get that to you. The worksheet is different than what you look up on Real Property Data Search because it's more in depth, gives you different things. Let's see. If we request a worksheet, will be emailed or snail mailed. I think that's at their option, Ava. And we normally
We
snail
can
mail
do
it, but if you email
We
us
can
with
do
the
both. We
request,
can email
we
it.
can email it.
Yeah, and appeals can be emailed too. Even if they don't
Yeah.
use the online portal with the
Yeah.
control number, they can actually just
Email
email
us,
us their appeal to that, to our MONT
Yep.
email box.
Mary Ann says, could you tell me why an overpayment of property taxes does not get identified to the homeowner payer? I received no notice, but found out a year later, the county says it's not their job to tell me they had my money. Well, what I'll tell you, Mary Ann, is the county is the taxing authority. We would have no way of knowing whether there was an overpayment, underpayment, no payment, complete payment. We don't deal with any of those things. We just deal with the value. So the county would be the one to address that question too.
Could you tell me who in the county?
Finance office.
Montgomery County Finance, is there a
Correct,
name?
yes. Ava, do you have a name of somebody?
I do not.
There's no idea
There's
what this
also the
might-
311.
Mike Coviu, COVEYOU.
He's the director of finance.
So, or you can, if you contact someone on the county council,
Well, I did.
or your state
You all
delegate, they
heard
could put
from me.
you in touch with the finance. Pardon me?
It took a year to get the money refunded, and that was only after I went to the county council, but it hasn't changed for people in the future. A number was transposed when the check was written, so you had almost $500 of my money.
So yeah,
And it seems to me,
I agree. That's a
it's a lot of
county,
money.
County,
Again,
I
that's a
agree.
county issue.
county function.
Yep.
So your best bet is to contact your county officials in a situation like that. I can see how frustrating that would be to have to wait.
Looks like there's one more in the chat, and then we'll get to the hand raised. Can we just fill out the request for worksheet, email to SDAT without filing an appeal? Yeah, you can email us and say, hey, we'd like our worksheet, and we can do that. And Adam even said we can get you the sales listing as well. Some people like to have that information first to determine whether or not they want to file the appeal. So you can just go ahead and do that. Now, I'm sorry it's taking so long to get to you, but 895-328-93783. You have your hand raised. You're muted. Okay, so Carol just put in the chat, can a realtor's assessment of impact on value be used in an appeal? You can always provide that to us, but the realtor's might be looking at different factors than we are. So again, it's something that we're going to give the weight that it's due. But if a realtor said, I can market your property for X amount, you can bring that to us. Now, whether or not we will, whether or not we would give that full weight as a sale would, it gets the weight it's due. Again, 895, you had your hand up and you're muted.
And I sent them a message directly to ask them to put a question in the chat, and
Oh, okay.
I got no response. So I'm not sure if it's just a glitch or an error.
Okay, well,
I'm going to ask a question.
yes,
Mike,
go ahead.
I'll ask it and I'll answer it too. So someone was asking me, you know, if I appeal my assessment, you know, doesn't that result in less money for the county? What services will be cut? I believe, you know, taxes pay for services, you know, and I guess my response to that, and you guys feel free to jump in too, is that, you know, the property taxation system, it's called ad valorem, which means everybody pays an amount that's based on the value of their property. So if your property is worth $100,000, you pay a certain amount. If your property is worth $1 million, you would generally pay 10 times that amount. But that system relies on the accuracy of the assessments. And, you know, SDAT does a fantastic job of doing the assessments every 3 years for a third of the properties, you know, to the best of their ability, but, you know, it's not a perfect system. And so the appeals process does provide a way to make those tweaks and those corrections. And it's bottom line, it's about fairness. You know, you don't want some commercial property that's worth, you know, $2 million only being assessed at $500,000. That means they're not paying their fair share. And conversely, you don't want some residential property that's worth, you know, $300,000 to be assessed at $700,000. So they're paying more than their fair share. So, you know, I think the county's going to get a set amount of money. And the question is, how is that allocated? Is it allocated fairly? And you as an individual property owner shouldn't hesitate to stand up for yourself to make sure that you're being assessed fairly. And I wouldn't worry about, you know, that you're going to somehow result in a reduction of services or reduction of revenue to the county. The county is going to get their set amount of money, but it's just how is that divided amongst the taxpayers? So there's that.
Yes, I would agree with everything. I see one other question here. Mary Ann says, what is the 692 based on and what could change it? That is based on the county council. My understanding is that it's their thing. They could come in next year and say it's $400. They can come in next year and say it's $1,200, or they could say it's nothing. But it's been 692 for the last 5 or 8 years or more. So it's up to the county council to determine that. And, you know, I'll share the screen one more time with the let me start the slideshow here. With that address, we put it in the chat again. But let me, and now I gotta share the screen here. And so this is, again, the information that you need. And I didn't see anything else in the chat. So if anybody has anything else, if you want to, you can contact me directly. I put my email in the chat and we can talk about this further. We will, you know, unless anybody else has anything right now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Delegate Carr. And that's all I got, unless anybody has any more pressing desires that they want to have discussed.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ava. I will make sure to send these recordings, and I've also copied the chat, so you will have a record of that as well. And I'll make sure you have those, so you so everything. Thank you so much for an informative opportunity.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
thank you. And
Take care.
Trevor, you'll make sure to send it to us as well. Send me a copy.
Oh, of course, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
All right, thanks again, everybody. Again, my next meeting was postponed, my bill hearing, so I was able to come back and join. Thanks again to our friends at SDAT. Thanks to the participants. If you need to reach my office for any reason, don't hesitate to reach out. And, you know, David, myself, or one of our other staff members will help you. I put my email address in the chat, alfred.carr@house.state.md.us. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Goodbye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.